I am Rakhi, representing Voices from the Periphery, and it is both a privilege and an honor to extend a heartfelt welcome to you all for today's enlightening lecture on why studies the history of science. The history of science is not merely a chronology of discoveries and inventions. It is a rich, complex narrative that reveals the interplay between power, knowledge, and society. In studying it, we bring to understand how scientific practices have been shaped by cultural contexts, political agendas, and colonial ambitions, and how, in turn, science has shaped our modern world. For us at Voices from the Periphery, this inquiry is crucial because it allows us to question whose knowledge has been legitimized and whose voices has been silenced in the name of universal science. Sir Deepak Kumar was a distinguished historian of science and education who served as a professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Renowned for his scholarship on the intersection of science, medicine, and colonialism in India, Professor Kumar's academic journey includes visiting fellowship and lectureship at prestigious institutions such as the University of Cambridge, London, Leiden, and Smithsonian Institution. He also taught at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and York University in Toronto. His seminal work demonstrated how Western scientific discourse operated as a tool of colonial domination, marginalizing indigenous systems of knowledge. Its practitioners often resist their then collaborate with imperial governments. He authored and edited several pathbreaking works, including Science and the Raj, a study of British India, Disease and Medicine in India, a historical overview, and Culture of Science and the Making of India. Collaborative volumes such as Technology and the Raj and the British Empire and the Natural World further established his pivotal role in shaping our understanding of science as a cultural and political enterprise. In his later work, the Trishanku Nation, Professor Kumar turned his gaze towards contemporary India, exploring the tensions between memory, identity, and modernity. His scholarship continues to inspire critical reflection on the entangled legacies of science, empire, and society. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Up to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Raki. Thank you very much. My apologies for being a little late. I hope you are hearing my voice. Is it clear?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Well, as you know, for last almost 50 years, I have worked on science and society issues in historical perspective, mostly concentrated on modern India. Last year, my another book came out. It's called Science and Society in Modern India, published by Cambridge University Press, paperback. It's available on Amazon. So this would be very useful for early research career as well as for masters who are doing masters in history. So you may like to have a look at its Hindi translation is also available. Bangla and Urdu will come out early next year in Bangla. Now the theme today, which I thought I talk to you, is about why study history of science. Most of you, I understand, are students of history, and you understand the significance of why we should study history, what do we learn from it, and so forth. But why history of science? And what constitutes science? Science, the term when I use it on in a large umbrella sense under which lots of things come. It is rational thinking, scientific temper, applied science, that is technology, knowledge about health, knowledge about medicine, medical history, and understanding of the environment in which we live, that's environmental history. All these are included in it. The term I normally use is HISTEM, history of science, technology, environment, and medicine. Science, technology, environment, and medicine. All these come under one this system, and it may be plural history, histories, not a singular history. There are different kinds of histories, and this can be taken care of, which deserve our attention. Another point which I think is significant why we should study HISTEM, HISTEM, is that it affects all of us. It's most secular. It doesn't differentiate between one community or the other, one region or the other, and it doesn't give primacy to one period over the other. So this is something which affects all human beings. So it has actually no borders. There is nothing like a national history of science or international history of science and so forth. In a sense, history of science helps obliterate borders in our thinking. As students of history, we have been taught in terms of political history, in terms of social history, in terms of economic history, in terms of cultural history. Four major divisions, and for the sake of convenience, we have further subdivided into ancient, early medieval, early modern, modern, and contemporary history, like this. Well, I understand it is very difficult to see history as a very as a long duty, as something which which is with us, has been with us continuously. We try to compartmentalize for the sake of convenience, which is understandable. Distant past, there can be a very, very distant past, there can be near past. So we do that for the sake of convenience. But we must always keep in mind that history continues. It's a continuous process. And we have inherited a very, very long civilizational history. All humans have inherited, a understanding of which is important. Another thing I would like to say at the outset also is that history is probably the greatest asset that nature has endowed us with. This has memory. This is the hard disk where we have the memory, and we have all inherited it. So we know something what happened yesterday, but we don't know what will happen tomorrow. History is not futurology. We can hazard a guess. We can draw lessons from history and plan for the future, but we hardly know anything about future. Is always uncertain. While we can always go back to past to understand ourselves, to understand our problems. And this past, we need to keep it in mind, can be problematic because as we go back in time, the memory gets blurred, the sources get blurred. So about very, very distant past, it's very easy to romanticize. It's very easy to say that, oh, you had Pushpak Viman, you flew everything. You knew so much. It's easy to claim, it's easy to romanticize, it's very difficult to remain critical. Of the near past, we can be very critical. So that's how, most of the time these days people talk about criticizing Nehru or the British or one party or the other because it's closer to us. It's fresh in the memory. If I ask about your father, you can be easily, afford to give a very critical estimate. But if I inquire about your great 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 grandfather about whom you don't know anything, maybe not even his name, then, you tend to romanticize, saying, oh, no, he was a great man, he was a Jamindar. It's very easy to romanticize. This we need to take into account whenever we go back in history, whenever we go back in past. Another thing is you can't put the clock back. Whatever may be you can't put the clock back. You can't obliterate history. You can't play with history. It's very tough, very, very, it's like a fire. It's inside your gene. It's under your skin. Now, earlier I had referred to history of political processes, political history. In fact, most of our history books are full of political developments. Politics fascinates us. We want to know about. So most of the history earlier was written in terms of this king, that king. Even today we are obsessed with this king, that king, this, and so forth. And to some extent it is natural. Politics excites us even today. It serves a political purpose also. So that's why you go back to Ashok, Akbar, Shivaji, Aurangzeb, and so forth. It serves even contemporary political purposes. But I would argue that let us talk also about politics of knowledge. Politics is not only about capturing power, capturing throne or parliament or darbar and so forth. There can be politics of knowledge in which scientific events or understandings play an important role. There can be politics of knowledge. What would be that history? What would be the history of rational thinking? How it was used for political purposes or acquiring power? How it was used for control? So, history of science can be taken in terms of politics of knowledge. Even today, you have all kinds of intellectual property right debates, etc., which is part of politics. In ancient times or in medieval times also, they played a role. Differences of opinion. Why for very long we remained geocentric? When heliocentrism came, it introduced a new kind of understanding and affected our political understanding. Why certain thought processes are not accepted, are rejected? Why certain other thought processes are accepted? Why Puranas became more powerful while very few of you would have known about astronomers like Brahmagupta or Varahamihira, who sometimes went against Puranic dictions, Puranic injunctions. Brahmagupta knew that in the 6th century AD, that eclipses take place because of the shadow of one falling on the other, falling on the other. But as in the Puranas, in the traditional knowledge, it had been mentioned that it is done by Rahu He refrains, he takes two steps back after taking one step forward. And no, Puranas have said this, it must be correct. I may be wrong, even my observations could be wrong. And thereby he saved his skin. That's the politics or the power of between traditional knowledge and new knowledge. Canonical knowledge and new knowledge. What is canonical knowledge? Canonical knowledge is what? The kind of knowledge that is sanctioned by its observance by a large number of people over a long period of time. It's called Shastra Sammat Gyan. We have seen its power in the recent Kumbh. Millions of people have got excited about it, claiming that it happens only once in 144 years, this constellation, therefore this particular Kumbh is more important. And millions went there. So we need to keep its significance in terms of changes in knowledge and how traditional knowledge or Shastra Sammat Gyan, canonical knowledge, keeps its hold. Even today, when eclipses occur, many of us observe fast. You'll find very brilliant physicists, scientists sporting different gems in their rings. They do this because they are conditioned by kind of thinking which was handed down by our ancestors since time immemorial. Another aspect which one can think about is understanding science in non-political ways. For example, social history of science, or social history of technology, social history of medicine. Social history we have been taught in our classes, in our undergraduate, masters, but they deal more with religious and reform movements, social reform, religious reform, etc. They deal with changes in the ideas or the works of the right from Adi Shankara to Baba Sahib Ambedkar. We studied in terms of several reform movements in medieval times, later Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, Kartavajaj, and so forth. But is social history, should do you think social history should be limited only to that? Can there be social history of germs? You saw 4 years ago how an innocuous single DNA strand germ caused havoc in the society. So we need a social history of medicine. Technology is not God given, technology is a social product. And we are using this technology to talk to you, to communicate with each other. Look at the enormous impact mobiles have made on our lives. So there has to be social history of technology. Technology is not a divine product, it's man-made. Like most of our ideas. They are rooted in science. This innocuous device, mobile, has centuries of knowledge within it. And the people who create it, they control it. You may have become consumer of this power, but did you generate this power? Did you generate this knowledge? There is difference between generation and dissemination. Very difficult to generate new knowledge, to find new knowledge, and harness its power. Similarly, what is cultural history? Is cultural history only about architecture, beautiful monuments that our ancestors had left behind, made for us? We need to reflect on what constitutes cultural history, what place we give to science or scientific thinking, rational thinking in this cultural history. Can there be something like culture of science, culture of technology? We need to think about and work accordingly. So there can be a cultural history of science. In fact, recently Primus Books have published my book, which is titled Culture of Science and the Making of Modern India. Culture of Science. This paperback should come out this year. Culture of Science and Making of Modern India. Economic history has held a sway for a long time. Especially Marxist scholars have always emphasized the significance of mode of production in understanding certain historical developments or historical forces. Those who controlled the mode of production, they controlled power. But history of economic processes and developments cannot be understood fairly without taking into account technological processes or technological knowledge, technical knowledge. For example, history of agriculture. I published a book again from Primus on agricultural knowledge and practices in British India. It was titled Tilling the Land. And in this, I tried to argue that agriculture history shouldn't be limited only to revenue collection, malgujari, or pagan revolts, and so forth. Of agriculture is also about agricultural knowledge. Our parents, who are not literate, who have hardly any idea of, but he knows the quality of his soil. He knows how to harvest water. He knows something even about the stars and what constellation there would be rain, or what constellation would be good for a particular type of sowing. So we need to take into scientific problems and technological problems as part of economic history. Lots of books have been written on trade in the Indian Ocean. You have studied about trade in the Indian Ocean. But is this trade only about the volume of trade? How much we exported to others? How India was very powerful, probably contributed 20-25% of the world GDP during Mughal and late Mughal period? How the cities like Agra and Lahore were more prosperous than many European cities? Still, we were enslaved. We were enslaved because we had lost cutting edge knowledge. Something went wrong. It was not because of one policy or one another war here and there that we lost freedom. We lost because something had gone wrong. What was that something? That something we can understand when we take into account the weaknesses in harnessing rational or scientific knowledge for economic purposes or social purposes. We couldn't do it, so we fell. Those nations who could do it, very small, tiny, seafaring nations like Portugal, the Danes, the Dutch, and of course the British and the French, they captured the whole world. When they came to different coasts, either in the Indian Ocean or Pacific or elsewhere, they went there with certain kind of tools and certain kind of knowledge with which they could easily or with some difficulty capture the land. Almost 75% of the earth was colonized. And even those places which were not colonized came under colonial influence, like China, Japan. So, STEM helps us understand colonization better. Colonization as a cultural force, colonization as a economic force, and of course as political upheaval. STEM gives you this perspective to understand colonialism and later imperialism in its inherent nuances. If you look into some of my writings, do go through these books. Yeah, and now again, Primus has republished second edition of my Trishanku Nation, where I have talked about it. I go back to distant past and come to contemporary times, so that the link would be clear. So understand it. So what I am pleading for is to give some space to HISTEM in our traditional. I'm not opposed to traditional division of history. No. I just seek a space in that. Teach Ashoka, Akbar, whatever you want. But at the same time, put a paragraph on what was rational thinking doing at that time. What kind of innovation was taking place. How the society was changing in terms of those innovations. What was the health of the people? The status of the health of the people. So we should have political history, but in that political history, give it a component of STEM in terms of politics of knowledge. Secondly, as part of social history, don't be obsessed only with social reform movement. Life is much more than social reform movement. We talked all the time in terms of reform. The more we talked about it, the more problematic our society became. You can see what is happening today. Where our traditional understanding of society has landed us today. There is more strife. There are more problems. So why not we should see social history or cultural history through the prism of STEM, through the prism of scientific thinking, through the prism of technological innovations, through the prism of medical requirements and environmental concerns. Today, environment history has become very popular. But 40 years ago, it was not. And this environmental consciousness comes from what? From a scientific understanding of what we have done to our resources, what we have done to our water. For example, history of water, history of germs, history of food. and similar things. So we need to innovate, we need to look into new kinds of historical understanding and processes so that we can handle our present better and, if possible, plan for the future. Well, tomorrow is not in our hands, but we can at least strengthen our fingers, strengthen our palm to handle the future with the power of our own understanding of what happened earlier in terms of histories of science, technology, environment, and medicine. I could go on and on, but I would like you to ask some questions so that we can, it becomes more interactive. Tools have allowed us to look the power of technology. It has allowed us to come face to face. You can listen my voice, I hope, clearly. But even more important would be if you read my books. That's more important. Because if you read them, you would be able to appreciate my arguments better. Shruti tradition is not enough. This online business is terrible business. I normally don't accept it, but what to do? It doesn't have a human touch. I can't see you. That's why I would please read the whatever I have written. It's there in the Wikipedia. You have the list. If you just type Google Deepak Kumar historian, it will come. Go through as many as possible, or at least take them to the library. Keep them in your institutional library. Encourage. If you read, probably you will understand me better than only listening. Because when you write, you use your fingers, and fingers don't allow you to slip. Every word is carefully thought about. But while using your tongue, there is a possibility of slip of tongue. Tongues are slippery in many cases. Politicians use their tongue, they hardly write. They have their own ghostwriters. I don't have a ghostwriter. I have to write myself. So read them. You will know better. Only listening is not enough. No. At least in the academic fraternity, it's reading and writing that makes you a better person. So, sir, please let me know if you have any questions. I talked about the relevance of history, why we should study history of science in terms of our traditional historical divisions and understandings. I can give you hundreds of examples why this is significant, but I would like you to interact and yes, please. Mr. Bera, please. Yes. Ask. What's your question?
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Good evening, sir. It was wonderful to hear you. And actually, I have two questions to ask. First is uh, from our childhood days in the basic school textbooks, for instance, we take the example of the Mughals. We know that the Mughals dominate the Indian subcontinent in the initial days through technology. So, due to gunpowder technology, to be precise. So, what makes the study of technology of that time with the present times when we are delving with the study in great detail? And my second question is right now we are living in a age of technology where artificial intelligence is trying to take over human creativity, human touch from everything, from our thought process, from everything to our visible eyes. So how can the study of history can help us in this process?
How is Yeah, very good questions. Both the questions are important. Now, from the technological point of view, we know that every period has its own significance. And in medieval times, it was not a dark time. No, no period in history can be dark. No period can be absolutely golden. It looks golden, distant past, as I said, you romanticize. But no period is golden. No period is dark. Every period is a period of transition. So the Mughal period was also a period of transition. Babur brought use of certain kinds of cannon, certain kind of gunpowder, which was not available earlier. So in ancient times, kings didn't have that advantage. Even much before Babur in 13th century, we have Persian wheel. And keep it in mind that those days there were no borders. Today you have borders, you have visa, you have leaders like Trump and so forth who stop you, who argue, who can be more powerful and atrocious if they want than Ashok or Akbar, anyone. Because now, with the power of technology, they can drive you. Earlier, it was not the case. In medieval times, the borders were fluid. Caravans, trade caravans carried ideas as well as items. It carried people. People came. It's not only in medieval, even in ancient times, you have Parthians, Scythians, Hunas, who didn't come and who didn't travel. Many people traveled. We also went to Southeast Asia, different parts, established temples, came back. Our ideas went as far to Korea and Japan. Somebody took it. They are not very well known, but the ideas traveled. The rational ideas of Buddhism. Jainism didn't go that far, but Islam traveled. You can see something which was born in the peninsula spread up to Morocco, Central Asia, up to very deep parts of Russia, and even up to Middle Europe. Christianity, which developed somewhere in the Levant, gradually spread through the Roman and the Byzantine empires, enveloped almost the whole of Europe, and later, through colonization, it enveloped South America, North America, and where not, came to us also in India also. So the borders kept changing, and technologies matter. Use of gunpowder, use of compass, use of printing press, use of paper, which emerged from China. Once it reached Europe, it revolutionized. And we received all this thanks to technology. Portuguese could come to us using the compass and a kind of muskets which we were not aware of. But we also contributed to it. In Jahangir's time, there was a Fatullah Shirazi who had come, who was of Iranian origin, come from Shiraz. He had created a multi-barrel gun, which you may take as a precursor of machine gun. Today is the age of Kalashnikov, but those were, this multi-barrel gun itself was a huge innovation. You can imagine its significance in terms of war. And that's how the Mughals won many wars. They fought. Along with sword, they had more technological power. Fort construction kept on changing. Many things. Textile. So our textile could capture the market abroad because of the finesse that our artisans could provide. There are many such examples where even minor changes in tools or technologies created a huge economic impact. Today, you are talking in more in terms of what you said in your second question, artificial intelligence. It is technology. You can imagine how it has changed our world. We have come to use this term artificial intelligence. We knew only about natural intelligence. Now we are using the term hard disk, softwares, soft power, and so forth. We are doing this because our knowledge had advanced and produced certain tools through which one nation, one city, one group of people could dominate the others very strongly. Look at the rise of China last 25 years. It dominates the world market. It is almost 8 times stronger than us. While only 40 years ago, we were at the same level. Only 40 years ago. We couldn't move. People say we couldn't move because we were like an elephant economy. And today people talk of, the duet between elephant and the dragon. But whatever be the reason, either it is their dictatorship or our democracy or whatever be the reason, the changes are unmistakable. Their influence, look at the import that we have. When my friends showed me the great arrangement that was made at Prayag over the Kumbh, millions of bulbs, millions and millions of bulbs, the beautiful tents, etc. Tell me who was the beneficiary? Where did the bulbs came? No political person had explained this. Where these resources, these manufacturing, where was it manufactured? The biggest gainer was China. Did you manufacture those bulbs? At home, you have a look at the gadgets that you have. How much of it is from China and how much of it is produced, except this textile, this beautiful ikat and the cotton. Even the spec which I use is not manufactured in our country. The lens. We go for German Carl Zeiss lens. Many things we use. With advancing age, I have to use hearing aid. That also is important. My computer, my mobile, many things. But anyway, because borders are shrinking, so now artificial intelligence, I am not very scared because I know nothing can overwhelm human ingenuity. We will remain the master of our own fate, but they will cause disruptions. Technology can be highly disruptive, especially in the hands of people who want to destroy. Like atom bomb itself. Everybody is threatening each other. There are dozens of countries which have atomic power now. Iran, Israel, Pakistan, this and all kinds of political mess that you find. People are threatening with bombs. So these threats are real. and we need to handle it with care and with the power of historical understanding, with the power of arguments, with appeal to morality, with appeal to ethics. For example, bioethics. These days, biological changes have taken place at a great pace. It's quite possible that someday we may produce a human being. We are already manufacturing organs. What would be the role of bioethics in it? Will it be good for humanity? People would give you all kinds of doomsday scenario, but I don't subscribe to it. I think human intellect, human ingenuity would finally triumph and continue to triumph and control or deal with lots of disruptions that will come as part of our civilizational growth. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Banerjee.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Subhashish Banerjee from Vishwa Bharati. Sir, I have two questions. First of all, sir, can you please explain the different views of the historians of history of science, like David Arnold, Dhruv Raina, Irfan Habib, Pratik Chakrabarti, etc.? And sir, my second question is why George Basaler's theory is not appropriate for all the colonials? Thank you, sir.
Oh, no, no, you have to read them. They are my colleagues, some my students, some my colleagues. And I began my work way back in 1975 when David Arnold was working on police in Madras. And these many of the names which you said, they were in there, either in high school or in colleges. So I began long ago, and Basala's thesis was given in 1967, and I had read it right at very beginning in 1970s. My first article was published. Patterns of colonial science was presented in 1977 or 78. There I have discussed it, and in Science and the Raj I have also discussed. Basala wrote at a time when understanding of colonialism and its links with science were not that well known. So he produced a three-stage model which he thought he would apply to everyone. Now, this is not possible. The problem with a model is that they hide more than they show you. No models are basically heuristic device. No model can give you a complete picture. All models are incomplete. That's how Basala's model is also incomplete. In my Science and the Raj, I have devoted the first chapter. You may have seen my Science and the Raj, published 30 years ago. It's still in print, 36th the print has come. So there I have talked about it. I appreciate its significance as a very pioneering attempt. But, as the scholarship grew, the models became obsolete. I think instead of reading only Basala's model, you should read a very good book which Basala wrote later in 1985 or 88 called Evolution of Technology. Evolution. He compares it with Darwinian, biological evolution. He says technology is also evolving. But technologies don't evolve on their own. There is a huge difference between biological evolution and technological evolution. The term evolution you can use, but the understanding is entirely different. Understanding is entirely different. Their dimensions are entirely different. Their growth are entirely different. Biology may, a germ or a mammal or a bird has life, but tools do not have life inside. They develop or they grow when you put that power into them. Even in artificial intelligence, chat GPT today, or what is called, something called grok has come, or something, which is creating a lot of hangama. All the data has been fed into it. So they could analyze the data, they could assimilate the data and give you an answer, which looks reasonably fine. Still, they simply cannot beat human understanding. And they shouldn't be allowed to replace human mind. If they do, as they did in terms of chess, Bobby Fischer and others in 1980s, when IBM created a chess genius of his own, and asked the Russian grandmasters and Bobby Fischer to deal with, that would be a bad experiment. Humans must retain the control. And I don't want to talk about my contemporaries. They have written in their own way, you read them. My only thing is that whatever I have written are based on very dense archival sources, the data from the horse's mouth. There are 2, 3 ways you can write history. Couple of ways, different ways. One is you go to the horse's mouth. The other is you read secondary sources, take knowledge from Foucault, Derrida, Max Weber, many others, take their models, Basala, etc., and superimpose it on Indian conditions or conditions in Assam or Tamil Nadu or like this, or society of a particular period, particular region. You can do it, but I'm basically an empiricist. I have traveled all around the country by train. Dozens and dozens, hundreds of libraries and archives within India and abroad. So all my writings will see as very dense footnotes. I've allowed my data to speak. And I leave the reader to reinterpret. Why should I put everything into my writing? You can, in fact, my writings invite the reader to become my co-author. I'm not definitive, no. No scholar can be definitive, however great he might be. So you interpret. You read all my colleagues, there are dozens of books now. Earlier, in 1975 when I began, there was not much. There was a concise history of science from inside by D.M. Bose, Subarayappa. There were, of course, P.C. Ray, history of Hindu chemistry, etc., which were such standard works. But now, hundreds of books have come on history. You read on their own, draw your conclusions. They are all relevant in their own way. Thanks. Yes. Mr. Rudra.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
হ্যাঁ, নমস্কার নমস্কার স্যার। আমি সৌতন রুদ্র বর্ধমান থেকে বলছি।
Hmm.
আপনাকে প্রথমে জানাই স্যার প্রণাম, শুভ সন্ধ্যা আপনাকে জানাই স্যার। আমার স্যার ছোট্ট একটা প্রশ্ন, বর্তমান সময়ে বিজ্ঞানী ইতিহাস চর্চা একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আকার ধারণ করেছে, কারণ ইতিহাস চর্চা বিজ্ঞান একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ মাধ্যম। আমার যেটা প্রশ্ন সেটা স্যার, যে পরিবেশের ইতিহাস চর্চা আর বিজ্ঞানী ইতিহাস চর্চা এই দুটো কি একে অপরের পরিপূরক? মানে পরিবেশ ইতিহাস চর্চা বর্তমান সময়ে দেখতে পাচ্ছি আরো নিত্য নতুন দিগন্ত উন্মোচন করছে, তার সঙ্গে বিজ্ঞান ইতিহাস চর্চাও নিত্য নতুন দিগন্ত উন্মোচন ঘটাচ্ছে। তাহলে কি এই দুটো একে অপরের পরিপূরক বলতে পারি স্যার?
They both can go together. Where is the problem? Why do you distinguish? It is not needed. You can, even in today's talk, I have to tell you that we have to take it together. I'm not against political history, I'm not against social history. I'm only asking for a space, a paragraph, a paper, an optional paper. That would be enough. So it can go together. Our traditional understanding of history and this understanding of history can go together. There is no problem. You know, I'm not the one who would advocate put certain things in the dustbin. No. Don't throw the baby with the bath water. The baby is important. The whole corpus of knowledge is important. The corpus of knowledge you should. Yes, Raki, you are saying something? Is the time over?
No, sir. Actually, I think maybe I was not audible.
No,
Thank
you
you,
were
sir.
not. You were fine, absolutely fine. I think even the camera is working. You can see me, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You
Pardon?
can see me. You can see me. The camera is on.
Yes, sir, we can see you, sir.
Oh, good. But I can't see you. This is not
Audible.
good. This is like a one-way traffic,
Yes, sir.
isn't it? No, no. Online, no good. But anyway, tell me
Sir,
any other question? Yes, Ayush
can you
here.
see me, sir?
Ayush, tell me.
Sir, can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
You have any question?
Sir, we have one question on Facebook. Can I ask it, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Sir, Arnav Rakit is asking one question. How can we critically interrogate the universalist claims of modern science while navigating the methodological dilemma of relying on Western academic frameworks such as post-structuralism or post-colonial theory that themselves emerge for the same epistemic tradition they aim to critique? In what ways does this paradox shape the historiography of science in non-Western context?
It's interesting, very interesting question. You know, these days the problem is that we all try to begin with theory. We look for theory first. My idea was just the opposite. I look to the experience first. Colonial experience, to my mind, is more important than colonial theory. Theory will emerge out of experience. In my books, I have talked more in terms of experiences. So you have the dense narration with evidence from impeccable evidence from the sources, from proper sources. You know, it's very easy to surmise. It's very easy to begin with theory. In fact, that's the different kind of historiography that we have inherited. The French talk more in terms of theory. That's why we, are enamored. But the British historians, they would give you evidence more. They would put emphasis on narration, on description, empiricism. These days, it's fashionable to talk about post-colonial, post-modern, pre-modern, pre-colonial. These prefixes and suffixes are important, I agree. They give you, they allow you to make a nuanced reading of historical process. But don't be obsessed with it. And these are the tools we have inherited from our sister disciplines like sociology, literature, and so forth. And the problem with most of these formulations are that their sources are very thin. On the basis of one manuscript, one text, maybe one paragraph, they will build up a whole theory which may be or may not be correct. May have heard of this great novelist Bengali novelist who wrote Standaini, and a great postmodern scholar, made such a study, Gayatri Spivak, of this particular text that even the author was taken aback. Shweta Devi couldn't understand, said, I don't know whether this was my intention. So the problem with some of these post understandings or writings are that they go beyond the original intentions of the author. That you have to be careful. These days it has become very common talk about decolonization, postmodern. So this has come because we are borrowing a great deal from literature, sociology, anthropology, and several other sister disciplines. But a historian has a historical method of his own. I would accept, I would listen to them, I would read them, but I would not allow my feet to be blown off by them, by their understandings or conclusions. I must stand on my own. In the first chapter of my Science and the Raj, I have discussed many others. So when I submitted 30 years ago to OUP, the referee wrote in his report, I don't know why Deepak Kumar is singing hosanas to these post-colonial scholars, post-modern scholars. They need him. He doesn't need them. And much later I was told that the referee was Professor Ashish Nandi himself. He is considered to be one of the most articulate postmodern scholar. So from a historian's perspective, I'm true to my tools, I'm true to my sources, and I leave something to you also to reinterpret, to agree or differ. Why worry so much about theory? I just don't understand. Theory should come later, not before. In my time also, I remember most of the research articles I used to see in 70s or 80s would begin with some quotation from Marx or Gramsci and so forth. I never did it. I never. I tried to read them. Sometime I understood, sometime I didn't. I let it go. I enjoyed what my sources said. Because you don't have access, you don't spend time in the archive, in the library. You don't know the sources. That's why you try to hide your that weakness or ignorance with the help of borrowing sentences and words from German, French, and American, many other scholars from different disciplines. Sorry about it, but this is what I felt, and I've written about it in my Trishanku Nation, second chapter of Trishanku Nation. You will see what is my understanding of history and how I moved. Thank you, Raki.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, Sultan, you can ask yourself. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, very kind. Thank you very much for the opportunity. God bless you. I would only say that please read and read as much as you can. Read everyone. Bye.
Hello, Sultan.
Bye
Hello.
bye.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Good night, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your exploration lecture. The wonderful lecture. Thank you, sir. Good night, sir.